I am blessed to know that we have an opportunity to be right here together. And, it's not under the tree of life yet, but I look forward to that. I really want to be with you all under the tree of life. I want my family to be there, my friends. And I can't show you that animals will be in heaven, but I can show you that I believe Psalm 104 talks about the animals being on the new earth. So will your animals be in heaven? Maybe not, but I think they're going to be in the world made new. So plenty of room for a lot of people there. And there will be no more sea, as my mother mentioned yesterday. And we're going to have plenty of land for people to inhabit, to build houses and to plant vineyards and the various things that Isaiah 65 talks about. So we're looking forward to that. I am. And I know that we're wanting to prepare not only ourselves, because it is the power of God that works in us to will and to do of his good pleasure, but we want to help prepare others as well. And how will they know except somebody is sent, right? So Romans chapter 10 is very important for these days as well. Anyways, we're looking at Exodus chapter 21. We're going to be able to go into this section and try to find out what God was saying to Moses right after the Ten Commandments. Remember, this was pretty clear to me in that chapter. After the Ten Commandments were delineated by the Father through his Son, we know that both of them were there in the heavens. Well, rather, on the mount. And it was God the Father who spoke through his Son. So the people that heard, they heard the words of God. They actually heard the voice of God through his Son. And so what we have is the voice of God speaking to these people about the Ten Commandments that were the foundation of his law. Well, after he was done delineating those Ten Commandments, there was one of those commandments that was brought up again. Don't make any gods of gold or of silver. Now, what is that? It's idolatry. God doesn't want idolatry. So right after that, Moses is interacting with the Lord again, and he learns some things in chapter 21 that, wow, at first when I started reading them and trying to be critical about what it's saying to be able to try to explain it to others, like to you today, I thought, ooh, this is going to be tough. But actually, the more I read it, the better it became. In my mind, I was able to understand it better. The first reading, I thought, man, this is pretty rough. Like, God doesn't seem to be in a good mood right now. I mean, I'm sorry to say that. It's just how it came across to me. But I realized after reading it several times that it makes a lot of sense. Now, I get it. There's much I can grow in. And I'm not going to say that I understand everything about chapter 21 in the book of Exodus. There's a lot of this stuff that I'm not familiar with. Some of the tone of voice, for example, some of the intentions, some of the learning curves that have to be brought out as a result of some of the judgments that were brought upon these people in their experiences. But I do feel like I understand it a little bit. So I'm just saying this is a tough chapter, and I think you can agree after we're done that there's plenty for us to learn about. So anyways, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we're going to try to understand a little bit more what it is that God is saying to his people. What we can see is Exodus 21 verse 1, it says right here, now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. Okay, so God is now continuing to speak, but he's now speaking with Moses. And I thought it was interesting that the judgments here can be translated, not all the time, but once in a while it can be translated as it reads here, ordinances. These are the ordinances, the rights, the actions, the wrongs, those things that are worthy or judgments, the fashions, that which you're going to be judged by, okay? So that's what's happening is you have these situation standards that are being brought up, and God is basically talking right now about Hebrew servants. If you buy, now buying is paying for. And it's interesting how that, if I remember, this word is used in Proverbs chapter 8. Now, let me just see if I remember correctly. I'm going to scroll through a ton of these. There it is, Proverbs. I saw it pass by. Proverbs 8:22. The Lord possessed me in the beginning of his way. Now, you guys know what this is, right? Proverbs 8:22. This is where God starts to describe how he brought forth wisdom, which was his son. Now, some would balk at that and say, oh, it's talking about wisdom and it's a female. Well, guess what? Wisdom, according to Paul, which is another prophet, so you have another witness there. You have Solomon and you have Paul. In chapter 1, verse 24 and verse 30, there's two scriptures by one witness. You have Christ being referred to as wisdom. And now you can go to, what is it, Matthew 11, I think it is. And you can see that Christ says that wisdom is justified of her children. Well, he's talking about himself in the context. So he is another witness. That's two witnesses, Paul and Jesus, but also God talking about wisdom being brought forth. So that's really like 2.5, 3, because we're questioning about Proverbs chapter 8, verse 22. Anyways, being female, that's not a big deal, because Christ in Matthew chapter 23 at the end, he was saying of himself, he's saying, like, if you would have just listened, I would have gathered you like a hen gathers her chicks under my wing, but you would not. Now, what is Christ doing? He's not calling himself a rooster, which is male. He's calling himself a hen, which is female. A hen gathering her chicks under her wing. So in an analogy, Christ personally used a feminine reference for himself. That doesn't make him transgender. Absolutely not. What it makes him is able to use a metaphorical situation in another gender for himself without any apologies. And so here, wisdom being female makes no problems at all. So if you have anybody that brings that up, like, wait, oh, Proverbs 8 doesn't talk about that. Yes, it does. Because you have two witnesses that verify that wisdom is Christ. Jesus himself, but also Paul, one of the New Testament prophets. Okay, so what we have here is this word possessed is the same identical word that's used here in Exodus 21, verse 2. If you buy a Hebrew servant, if you possess one, if you have paid a price, as I believe it could be rendered in Proverbs 8:22, because the father paid a price for his son. It wasn't real easy just to beget his son, knowing that this whole experience would be brought forth after this begetting, where somebody, specifically Lucifer, would give up the faith of God alone, and then he would go and do something contrary, which would end up crucifying his son. So yeah, he paid a price in his own emotions and his own experience. If you buy a Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall be serving you. Now wait a minute, 6 years, what's that? And in the 7th year, he shall go out with no price. That means he doesn't owe you a thing. You don't have to pay him, he doesn't have to pay you. You bought him, and you paid for him for 6 years. Now, 6 days shalt thou labor. Here you have 6 years shalt thou labor, and do all the Hebrew master's work. Now, some people would, scoff at this too, like, wait a minute, God is endorsing slavery. Well, yeah, because he was supposed to be having his people as holding extremely high standards in moral character, and they were the ones that were supposed to be the slave owners. Now, these people weren't supposed to be beating their slaves or, treating them ill or causing any harm or molesting them or, giving them a lack of food or a lack of some place to stay. These were supposed to be honorable men that were taking care of other honorable men, giving them jobs. And so if you paid for somebody for 6 years, it was like a contract. You enter into a contract and you expect that you're going to be contracted for 6 years, but the 7th year, hey, that guy is free to go as long as, he wants to, because there is an option for him to stay if he wanted to as well. You're going to learn about where ear piercing comes from. And so this idea of the slavery here, it is not bent alongside the same kind of slavery we've learned about in North America, where many of the Irish folk that came over here in America were actually slaves. They were treated ill, they were treated inappropriately, they were made to do some of the lowest stuff, and they were killed, they were beaten, all that stuff. No, that's not the kind of slavery we're talking about. And some of the Africans as well were treated that way. That's the one we hear about most. But listen, there were other people that were slaves other than just the Africans, okay? So, do your history, look up just the Irish, go check it out. And so you find that this situation with the slavery is not the same kind of thing. So for people to throw the Bible out and say, hey, that's just nonsense. Look at God endorses slavery. Wrong kind of slavery, okay? So let's not just throw out, as I read the other day, the baby with the bathwater. Okay, so not as though we would want to do that at all. But that's what this is saying, and it's also what it's not saying. You buy a servant under contract, and you're going to treat him well for 6 years. 6 years shall he labor and do all the Lord's work, the Lord of his home. And in the 7th year or day, you will do nothing. So it's kind of like an extended yearly Sabbath right here. That's kind of neat. Verse 3, if he came in by himself, he didn't have family, he didn't have anybody with him, well, then he shall go out by himself after 6 years. Now, if he were married, then his wife shall go out with him, because he's the one that decided to bring this person into his life under contract, except it's a different kind of contract. He didn't have to pay his wife to be there for the rest of his life, till, death do we part. But what he does is he is under contract with her, kind of in the same way that he's under contract with his Hebrew slave, how would you say, master, okay? So now if he comes in and has a contract with somebody else, which I know is a different kind of contract, but it's still it's the same idea, then his wife shall go out with him. Now, if his master, the Hebrew master that paid for him for 6 years, if he has given him a wife, so okay, think about this. You come into my house under contract for 6 years. I happen to have a daughter. I like you a lot as my servant. Well, I give you my daughter to wife, right? Well, guess what? When you leave, you're going to learn that, that's my daughter because she was mine first. And I just gave you while you were under my contract. And you're like, wait, what? Well, that's really what God was doing. That's my daughter. Okay. Or if I gave somebody that I knew of that was my property, if you will, because I had been under contract with this person, if I gave that person to you to wife, that's still my property. And so for example, if you come in at 6 years, if you come in for 6 years and you've been there for 3, and then somebody else comes in that's been there just, right away. So they're under contract for 6 more years, but you're only under contract for 3. If you marry this person, she is still the servant gal, if you will, of the master for another 3 years, right? So think that through, and it's pretty interesting. And it would be tough. But here, notice what it says. If his master has given him a wife, and she have borne him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's. And he, that's the slave that was able to marry, shall go out by himself. You're like, what? That's separation of family. Okay, well, yeah, that's true. But if this man has a love in his heart for his family and his wife, then what's going to happen? He already knew this when he got married, okay? So this is part of the situation. If the servant shall plainly say, this is the servant's words, the servant wants to speak up. And so it's now the servant's idea to plainly say, I love my master. Now that's cool, because now he loves his master. He doesn't hate his master. You're supposed to love your master. The master is supposed to represent God to this person, just like, parents are supposed to represent God to their children. I love my master. I love my wife, and I love my children. I will not go out free. Okay, so this man, he actually loves his family. He loves the person he's been serving for 6 years. He doesn't want to separate from his master or his family. So, no, it's not family separation. Okay, if he did want to go, it was probably an issue with him and his family. And, maybe the master would take better care with him anyways, because there is a situation with the women that they can leave under any time, okay? You'll see that in just a moment. They could be purchased back. So the woman's not stuck there like the man would be. Okay, if the woman comes in and she wants to leave, that's her business. Now, if the man leaves by himself and the woman's like, you know what, I really wanted my husband to be here. I want to be redeemed. I want to be paid back, purchased by somebody else. I'm not sure how that works, but it may be that she was able to be purchased by somebody else and then given over to the man. I don't know, but, I'm sure there were ways to work within the system without breaking the rules, It almost like through the back door, which wouldn't be immoral necessarily, but there is a way out for women like there wasn't for men. So you can see that God was being very thoughtful about his people, and he wanted to make sure that women weren't just treated ill or as a tool, if you will, to raise up children because, or for pleasure. That's not what this slavery was about. Anyways, here it is. Then at this point, when the master has plainly spoken, I love my master, my wife, and my children. I don't want to go out. Well, then his master shall bring him unto the judges. The judges were actually the priests, and they were supposed to know God's laws very well. So the judges and the priests, they worked kind of under the same hat, if you will. Then the master shall bring him unto the judges. He shall also bring, like, for example, what do we learn about in just a couple of chapters earlier, where Moses was spoken to by his father-in-law Jethro, and Jethro made suggestion that there would be judges over thousands, hundreds, tens, and fifties, or fives, right? Whatever. I don't remember how it went. But so the master would take it to one of these guys, not Moses necessarily, and his master will not only bring him to the judges, but he will also bring him to the door of his house, or unto the door post. And his master shall bore his ear. Whoa, what does that word bore mean? To bore, the root word is, it doesn't say it here, but on my iPhone, I have an app that's the same thing. It's Accordance. And it gives me the option to choose a different word. And the other word, I guess this is it. This is pierce. This is the word all. 7527, that word means pierce or to bore. Okay. So this man is supposed to bring him after the judges to his door or to his doorpost, and his master shall pierce his ear through with something to pierce his ear with. So, and he shall serve him forever. Now, okay, wait a minute. You're going to pierce a man's ear? Well, yeah. I've had my ears pierced before I was a Christian, and I didn't wear it because I thought it looked dumb. I thought I looked pretty cool, and that's why I wore it. And so it was really about me. That's what jewelry tends to be. And so I had 2 earrings in my left ear here. I never wanted one in the right ear because over in California at that time, that kind of meant something, and I wasn't going to go that direction. So I was over here with 2 on my left ear, and my ear was pierced through. Well, taking him to the door or to the door post and piercing him, it makes me think that he actually had to bore it through to pin him to the door or the door post. Now, that doesn't mean forever, but what it represented is you are now secured to this home. I don't know how long he was supposed to stay there, but it was a piercing through his ear, and the doorpost and the door were involved, or the door. So I'm just thinking, like, this guy went through a little bit of pain for his decision. It wasn't that bad when I got my ears pierced. It was just, more of a ouch, that hurt, but it wasn't a big deal. So when you're entering into this covenant to stay with your master, your wife, and your children, because you love them, you said it plainly, then there's a little bit of pain involved, and you are committed forever. Now, forever, how long is that? Well, until the slave dies. We've already talked about that when we went through the everlasting gospel in our 20-part series on on the 3 angels' messages of Revelation 14, verses 6 through 12. We did 20 parts there, and one of the first ones was dealing with everlasting, which now we can understand a little bit more about Jesus being eternal and what that means, or what that can mean about us as well. So, if you're interested about that, you can go and search that one out. Anyways, the idea of piercing your ear, that's where I think it came from. Now, it may have been already in existence, but this is some of the earliest history that I know about, and I've not done all the research, but, there was likely piercings in the Egyptians' ears and in the ears of those that were in Canaan, etc. But this is a biblical start point that I know of for the piercing of the ear. So people that pierce their ears today, they don't realize that they're actually slaves. And they're not slaves to the Lord, symbolically, but they're slaves to somebody who wants them to be pierced, whereas God necessarily doesn't want you to be pierced. And you can read about that in some of the other scriptures as well, like Isaiah 3, for example. Read that one. It's pretty straight. Verse 7, if a man sell his daughter to be a maidservant. Now, okay, so a man is selling. Now, up here earlier in verses 1 through 6, we talked about a man buying. But now this man is selling his daughter. Okay, this man has a daughter, and he is selling her to be a maidservant, not for sex trading and various, being a tool for raising children, etc. No, this is being a maidservant in the home, basically as a job, if you will. She shall not go out as the men servants do. No, there's something different about the ladies. If she please not her master, if it's not working out and she knows it, he knows it, who hath betrothed her or committed her to himself, then shall he let her be redeemed. Now, this word redeemed means to be paid back or bought back, right? So to be, ransomed, to be delivered back to where she was or to somebody else, to be rescued, or to be, treated securely or surely. Well, she shall be redeemed according to the one who bought her. But to sell her to a strange nation, to like the Canaanites, the Philistines, the Hivites, the Hittites, oh no, nuh-uh. He shall have no power, seeing that he has dealt with her deceitfully. So this young lady who thought that she was, going to be treated well and she was going to be, given over to be a maidservant for this man, and it just wasn't working out. Like, this wasn't, no, I didn't understand all this. Then he will allow her to be redeemed, to be paid for by somebody else, if you will. And he's not stuck in that contract, neither is she. But the men, you're sticking around for 6 years. And if he have betrothed her unto his son, he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. Okay, so now, if his son so she was purchased by a man, and it wasn't necessarily for him that she was a maidservant, but he thought, well, hey, this is great. She's about my son's age, and so he betroths her unto his son. You see, it's not always about the man getting the woman. It's about the man trying to raise his family, right? So he shall deal with her after the manner of daughters. So he is now thinking about her as not just a maidservant, but now a daughter. And you're not going to mess with a man's daughter, okay? I mean, just ask any man that has a daughter. Don't mess around. Especially if you are a Christian and you have high morals, then you don't mess with, you don't mess with daughters. So if he take him another wife, which is in addition to this maidservant that we talked about here, right? Now this is for for the son. If he take him another wife, so now he has two wives, and I'm just letting you know that would be a real bummer. I know that this happens, and it's something that's been dealt with in the Bible, and it's exemplified, not necessarily as a description of what should happen. Not as a prescription of what should happen, but as a description of what did happen. I'm just telling you, it would be a big deal to have two wives. I'm not interested, right? The one is plenty, and this is talking about two, so I'm glad that the Bible says that the minister needs to be a husband of one wife. I'm just saying it's a good thing. So if he take him another wife, I would ask him, why, man? What's wrong with you? And he would anyways, here, her food, her raiment, and her duty of marriage shall not diminish. Okay, now what does that mean? She needs to be taken care of. She needs to have raiment, which is like food, raiment, and the duty of marriage. What is this? We know what food and raiment are, but what is the duty of marriage? Just this word doesn't have a Hebrew origin, but this one does. So I'm going to triple click it, and we're going to see that it is the meaning to dwell together. Sexual cohabitation. It's called the duty of marriage. So you're not going to leave her without any kind of, interaction. You're not going to starve her. You're not going to leave her without food, and she won't be, just neglected. So the whole point is that if this man is going to take another wife, then he's really like putting himself under the responsibility of now more to take care of. Double time, if you will. And so the food and the raiment, the duty of marriage, this stuff right here is not something you can just treat lightly for a woman. She wants to be taken care of. I mean, I know one of the things that women really like is to be felt as though they are secure. I think that's the word, secure. Like me, I don't have to be secure, so it's not something I can know personally. Everything can be falling out, falling around me, falling down around me, and I'm okay. It's just like, Lord, take care of this. I sometimes can get frustrated over it. Forgive me, Father, but it's a real thing. So I don't have to feel secure, but many times the ladies want to be secure, not only in their future, but in their present. They want to be felt safe. They want to, that kind of stuff. And that's what God is taking care of here. Don't go getting a bunch of women because they're beautiful and you think you can just interact with all these ladies and then, you don't have enough money to pay for them like you should be taking care of them. Oh, no. It's a big responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. Like I have a wife and 2 kids that I love extremely, very much. I wouldn't want another wife and kids. No, I've got plenty. And my wife and I were saying like, we want 2 kids and that's it. We don't want more. Well, now my wife would say she would want more because she misses holding her little babies. But nope, not for me. I'm glad we have 2. I'm glad they're healthy. I'm glad they're older, and the life is going on. So me, I'm just happy with 1 wife and my kids. So I don't get this part right here, but I do get it that the women like to feel secure, and the Lord is taking care of that for them. I really like that about his character. He's dealing well with those that are considered slaves. And we shouldn't think that slaves can be ill-treated in the eyes of God and that it's okay. Now, verse 11, if he do not these 3, which is taking care of the food, the raiment, and the duty of marriage, unto her, then shall she go and go out without money. That means she doesn't have to pay any price. And he obviously hasn't paid the price for her because he's not taking care of her food and her money. And he's not given her the time that she likely desires from him. I mean, they got married to begin with. I mean, of course she would want that, right? If he does not these 3 things, then she's free. She shall go. Okay, that's what it's saying. And so right here, God is taking care of women differently than he takes care of the men. And I think that's important because sometimes men can be a little bit, how would you say? Well, you put in that word. How's that? Verse 12, he that smites a man so that he die shall surely be put to death. So like this was even a Egyptian rule, right? Because when Moses smote that man and buried him under the sand, why did he run? He ran for his life, okay? Because he knew that he was going to be killed. That's kind of like a common law. If you're going to kill somebody, you're going to be killed, especially not just accidentally, because that's being dealt with here too. But if somebody really wants to have somebody dead and they do so, then the price according to the Bible is life. This was under, of course, the theocracy. That's a huge topic, but the theocracy is not like a monarchy where you have a king and a queen, although there is a king and the queen. Well, not a queen, but you have the king, which is God. It's not an earthly king like a monarchy where you serve and worship and honor the king on earth, although we're not supposed to worship anybody on the earth, but you get what I'm saying. So a theocracy is where God is in charge, and he was literally in charge of his people. You could read that about the Urim and the Thummim, where one would light and the other would darken, and God would get answers directly to his people through his son, through the ministration of angels, through the prophets, or the leaders, the priests that are involved, and his people would know what it was that God was judging in some regards. So that's where God was their leader. Today we don't have that, okay? We don't have a direct connection to the sanctuary, and we don't have the high priest with the Urim and the Thummim like we used to. So we don't have the same kind of things. We're not under a theocracy necessarily. Neither is America, by the way, when it says one God, one nation under God. Not true. It's just, something nice that they put on their dollar bills, unfortunately. So here, what we have is, he that smites a man so that he dies, he shall surely be put to death. Now, if a man does not lie in wait to kill somebody, but God delivers him into his hand, if it just happens that that man is killed or dies, I don't even want to try to make up some kind of situation, but if this man is not intending to kill a person, but God delivers him into his hand, then I will appoint thee a place whither he shall flee. Now, this place whither he shall flee, this is called a city of refuge. Okay, now let me just try to see if I can search that real quick. City, I'm going to just do that, of refuge and quote, and then you have 10 places where then you shall appoint you cities to be cities of refuge for you. This is so that, here's why, that the slayer, the one who killed somebody, may flee thither, which kills any person at unawares. So that's what it means that God had put this person, or given this person into the hand of the slayer. The slayer killed that person unawares. Okay, that's why these cities of refuge are available. And you can go and search that for yourself. There's 10 references there. I did a sermon years ago when I was a pastor in Michigan about the cities of refuge. And I'm not going to take that time now. But anyways, here we have, then that place that the Lord has appointed will be where he shall flee. Why? Because he didn't lie in wait. He didn't mean to kill the person, but the person is now dead. God delivered him into his hand. But on the other hand, if a man come presumptuously upon his neighbor to do what? To slay him with guile, deceit, intentionally, thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die. In other words, I'm not going to have mercy on him. I won't be listening to his prayers. He's going to die. Now, what does this mean, take him from his altar? I remembered a story when I was reading this section of 21:14, and it took me to this 1 Kings 2:28. I'm going to read this real quickly, and you're going to hopefully be able to pick up what's going on. Tidings came to Joab, for Joab had turned after Adonijah, though he turned not after Absalom. And Joab fled unto the tabernacle. So Joab is flying to the altar, okay? Just like we read about here. Thou shalt take him from mine altar that he may die. So what is Joab doing? He's going to the tabernacle of the Lord and caught hold on the horns of the altar. And it was told King Solomon that Joab was fled unto the tabernacle of the Lord, and behold, he is by the altar. So it was told Solomon, hey, Joab's by the altar. Solomon sent Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, saying, go and fall upon him. And Benaiah came to the tabernacle of the Lord and said unto him, thus saith the king, come forth. And he said, nay, but I will die here at the altar. And Benaiah brought the king word again, saying, you know what? Joab said that he was on the altar, and you know, what am I supposed to do? The king said, do as he has said. Fall upon him and bury him. Kill him at the altar, that thou mayest take away the innocent blood which Joab shed from me and from the house of my father. And the Lord shall return his blood upon his own head, who fell upon two men more righteous and better than he. So in other words, he intended to kill these two men, and now kill him, even at the altar. And he slew him with the sword by my father David, not knowing thereof, to wit, Abner, the son of Ner, captain of the host of Israel, and Amasa, the son of Jether, captain of the host of Judah. So this man, Joab, killed Abner and Amasa. And their blood shall therefore return upon the head of Joab, and upon the head of his seed forever. But upon David, and upon his seed, and upon his house, and upon his throne, shall there be peace forever from the Lord. Remember who the son of David was, by the way? Okay. So Benaiah, the son of Jehoiada, went up and fell upon him and slew him, and he was buried in his own house in the wilderness. So right at the altar, Joab died. And so that's what's being said here. Hey, if somebody comes and presumptuously slays his neighbor to slay him with guile, what did Solomon do? Solomon followed the Bible. Thou shalt take him from mine altar, and he shall die. Verse 15, he that smites his father or his mother shall be surely put to death. Okay, you don't treat people like that. There are folk today, I mean, I know that in the cities and places like that, places where the morals are low, men smite their mother and father all the time. I've seen this kind of thing from a distance, and it's not right. And I'm telling you, the Bible says those people ought to be killed righteously. There's going to be judges that are set up. There's going to be witnesses that are involved. No man is going to die by the hand, except by the hand of 2 or 3 witnesses, right? So it's not like mama comes and says, he smote me, and then everybody stones him. No, you've got to have a whole system set up, and that's where you are able to verify that all these things are true and that the parents actually want to condemn this person. So guess who would throw the first stone? It wasn't just some random person. It was the one that brought up the judgment. So it would be the mother or father that actually bore witness against the child that would throw the first stone. This is a huge setup. I mean, what parents would want to do that, right? So, I mean, if the child is really unruly and it's impossible to take care of that child, and the better thing to do is to just have the child dead, then yeah, go to the judges. But otherwise, that's a huge thing for any parent to do. So it's probable that most of these things, like this one here, this one here, most of it didn't come to pass very often. I'm just saying. So he that steals a man, okay, so it's not his man. He didn't buy him. He's just stealing it. So it's like kidnapping. And he sells him for whatever purpose. Sometimes people will steal children today and sell them for sex trading. So if somebody steals somebody like that and sells him, if he be found in his hand, he shall what? Surely be put to death. I'm just telling you that if it was me, I would set up a system that if you were guilty of any kind of child molestation or rape, that you would be castrated. That's it. You're done. You will never have those desires again. You'll still live, but it's going to be different, right? You can be in jail for a time too, but no, you're not going to do that again. That's what I would do. And so, hey, that's just, if I were the ruler, things would be a little different. So verse 17, he that curses his father or his mother shall surely be put to death. Okay, so now cursing, you're not even smiting, because this one's smiting. Let's look at this one here. This one is to murder, to punish, to slaughter, to slay, to strike, to leave stripes or wounds. Okay, that's a big deal. Now, to curse the father or mother, let's see, what do we have here? To be light, literally swift, sharp, or figuratively trifling. To abate, to bring into contempt. To accurse, despise. To make somewhat, lightened, or to lowly esteem. Okay, so now that's a big deal right there. I mean, yeah, okay, so if you're killing, murdering, slaying, or smiting your parents, but you're just cursing them, wow. He shall surely be put to death. That's a big deal. Now remember, father or mother are the ones that are going to be the ones, possibly, not for sure, but possibly they're the ones that condemn this child to the judges. Now, it could be that somebody outside the family is bringing up the case, but the father and the mother would have to testify, yeah, that's true. We do want him to be stoned. That's a big deal. So this probably didn't happen very often. Because, hey, God had high standards, and it wasn't just everybody was killing all their children. No, that's not how it went. If a man strive together, and one smite another with a stone, or with his fist, and he does not die, but he keeps his bed, in other words, he's afflicted and he goes to the hospital for a while. If he rise again and walk abroad upon his staff, like, okay, he's going to get up out of his bed, but he's limping for a while, then shall he that smote him be not guilty. That word quit means not guilty. Okay, so to be clean, to be, acquitted or blameless, to be cleansed. And you're like, wait, what? Okay, so these guys had an argument. This guy got beat up. He didn't die. Okay, so they both started the argument. Like, think about it. These two people are having a fight. Now, I could have backed off and just backed off. Hey, I don't want this. I'm sorry. Yeah, right. I'm angry, but I don't want to fight. But if two people fight and it ends up that one gets in the hospital and he ends up living, well, hey, you both started it. That's kind of what I'm getting from this. But I may be wrong. I don't have all the history. But this guy, it says, only the one who's guilty, not guilty rather, he shall pay for the loss of his time at work, for his family, for whatever bills he's, indebted to, because, there's the year of release, which is every 49 years, or after 49 years, the 50th year. It maybe hasn't come yet. Well, anyways, now it's his burden. He shall cause him to be thoroughly healed for, like, say he's in the hospital or in bed for 3 months. He beat him in the head with a rock and the guy's beat up. Well, 3 months worth of time, this guy that's not guilty, he's going to be paying for this guy's livelihood. Okay, that's a big deal. But now if a man strike a servant, so smite or strike a servant or his maid with a rod, like spare the rod, spoil the child, right? That's kind of what the Bible teaches, that a fool needs a rod. There are biblical reasons to use a rod. This is not just that a Hebrew male servant master, a Hebrew master, is just beating up his servants. That's not what it's talking about. But there can be servants that are fools. And there are reasons in the Proverbs to use a rod on the back of a fool. So if you now have a fool servant or a fool maid, and you use a rod as punishment, and he dies under his hand, well, no, you can't do that. He will be surely punished, not just punished, surely punished. Okay, right. You bought him as a servant slave, and you're supposed to, teach him and educate him and take care of him for 6 years, but you don't kill him. So surely punished. Verse 21, notwithstanding, if he continue a day or two, which I don't fully understand, I'm just saying I don't get this verse, he shall not be punished, for he is his money. That means his property. He paid for him. Okay, wait. So if you beat somebody with a rod educating them. That's the biblical reason to use a rod, one of them, especially as a moral Hebrew manservant, slave master. Sorry, I'm trying to get my thoughts correct here. If you ill-treat this person, then, and you kill him, you're going to be surely punished. But if you beat him to an inch of his life to where he lives for 2 or 3 days, then you're okay. He was your property. I don't understand that one. I'm just saying, I don't get it. But I will learn in heaven. That one is one of the verses I'm going to question about. And I'm sure God is going to say, oh, you didn't understand. This was actually quite merciful, and here's why. And I'm going to be like, oh, wow, I totally didn't get it. So I'm sure that the Lord has a good reason for this. I just don't understand it now. So maybe at the end you can help me understand. So now, verse 22, if men strive and hurt a woman that is with child, so that the woman has the fruit of her womb depart from her. In other words, she has a miscarriage. Okay, so it's almost like having an abortion. This man, or the man, strove and hurt a woman so that she aborted her child, yet no mischief follow. In other words, the woman is okay. She doesn't end up losing her life or become sick or whatever. He shall be surely punished according to the woman's husband that will lay it upon him. So now the woman's husband is the judge in this situation because it's his child too. I mean, the life of the child actually started with him and then went to the woman, right? Because it was his seed that bound together with her egg. So what you have here is if a man strives, hurts a woman, she ends up having a miscarriage, and she's okay though. Well, then he's going to be surely punished, and it's the husband that lays out the standard. And he shall pay as the judges determine as well. So it's the husband and the judges that are working together on this one. You don't mess with the woman that has children, okay? Children are precious in the sight of the Lord. And you can just ask Jesus. He said, if the kingdom of heaven was like unto these children, or if you are like unto these children, you will be in the kingdom of heaven. It says, verse 23, if any mischief follow, in other words, she is miscarrying and she's now bleeding and she's sick and she's ready to lose her life, then this is when you see the eye for the eye, the tooth for the tooth. Thou shalt give life for life. In other words, if this woman was beaten, she loses her child and she loses her life, then the man who beat her or caused her any trouble is going to lose his life too. If she loses her eye, he loses his eye as well. She loses a tooth, his tooth. Her hand, his hand. Her foot, her foot. If she's burnt, he gets burnt. He gets a wound, he gets a wound. A stripe, a stripe. So, an eye for an eye or tooth for a tooth, that's with women that have children. That's like in an abortion situation. Wow, it's pretty interesting, isn't it? Verse 26. And if a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go for his eye's sake. And he's going to lose his own eye too, right? Verse 27. If he smite out his man's tooth or his maidservant's tooth, he shall let him go free for his tooth's sake. So he doesn't have to pay for the 6 years worth of his contract. He can go if he loses his tooth. Now we're going to talk about animals here in a few verses. If an ox, which is like a tractor, if you will, during those days, we all need that kind of stuff, don't we? If an ox gore a man or a woman, that they die. So an ox has killed somebody. Then the ox shall surely be stoned to death, and his flesh will not be eaten. Oh no, you don't want that. You don't want to eat that kind of meat. But the owner of the ox shall be quit or guiltless. Okay, so the ox goes crazy, kills somebody. You don't eat the meat, but the owner is okay. But if the ox were known to push with his horn in the times past, you knew that ox was, somebody who had a bad attitude, and you knew like you shouldn't have people or kids around it, and it has been testified to his owner. So the owner knows that this ox has been pushing with his horns in times past. By the way, that word push is the same one used in Daniel chapter 11. I thought that was interesting. Verse 40, I think it is. And it has been testified to his owner, so the owner knows now, and he has not kept him in other words, he hasn't kept him safe, but he has killed a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned and his owner shall be put to death. Now why? Well, because the owner should have known that this oxen has the potential of killing someone. And so it's not right that man should allow that ox to be put out in the field with others when he knew that ox was dangerous. It's kind of the same situation. Like you might have a gun. I know James White had a gun. He had a long rifle and a few others too, I'm sure. His son would use it. And so when you have a gun and you know that the gun is loaded and somebody comes in, pulls the trigger, accidentally kills themselves, yeah, you're at fault, right? That's kind of like the same thing with the ox that you knew could have potentially been dangerous. So this gun in your house could potentially be dangerous. You're at fault if somebody dies. And so that's kind of the same situation there. And it says in verse 30, if there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatever is laid upon him. So this owner that is going to be put to death, he needs to pay first his ransom. Okay, he needs to pay rather his debt. If there be laid on him a sum of money, to way I understand that is if he's in debt, then he shall give for the ransom, for the payment of his life, whatsoever is laid upon him. So he's going to pay with his life what his debt is. That's what it sounds like to me anyways. If I'm wrong, may the Lord correct me. Whether he have gored a son or have gored a daughter, according to his judgment shall it be done unto according to this judgment shall it be done unto him. If the ox shall push a manservant or a maidservant, so this is the ox that is pushing, he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Okay, this is now a manservant or a maidservant. So he shall give unto their master 30 shekels of silver, and the ox shall be stoned. Verse 33. If a man shall open a pit, or if a man shall dig a pit and not cover it, and an ox or an ass fall therein. Now remember, Jesus referred to this law, didn't he? You know, on the Sabbath day, if your ox falls into a pit, won't you go and help your neighbor to pull it out? Well, if an ox falls into a pit, and it's that the man had dug the pit, but he didn't cover it, it says the owner of the pit shall make it good, and give money unto the owner of them, which are the oxen, and the dead beast shall be his. In other words, if the beast dies in a pit, well, then the owner of the pit has to pay for the dead beast, and then the owner of the pit that just bought this beast now has to take care of a dead beast in a pit. So it's really a bummer. If you've done that, you're stuck with the consequences, man. It's like, bummer. I got to pay for this thing, and I got to take care of it. Nobody wants to take care of a dead oxen, right? Anyways, verse 35 and 36, and then I think we're done. Yep. Verse 35, if one man's ox hurt another's, that he die, then they shall sell the live ox and divide the money of it, and the dead ox also they shall divide. So they're going to be eating that dead ox that died at the hand or gore of another ox. And that just makes good sense. I mean, I don't know how to apply that in today's practices, but I'm sure one of you has a good idea about verse 35. You can help me understand better. Verse 36, or if it be known that the ox has used to push in times past. So this ox has been brutal in the past, and his owner has not kept him in, he shall surely pay ox for ox, and the dead shall be his own. Now I understand that you're not supposed to eat these oxen that have been killed. Maybe you can, I don't know, but he needs to pay because he knew that this ox had been doing that in times past. So it's like you need to take responsibility. That's what I learn about in these principles here. God has set up judgments or ordinances in such a way, or laws, that help us know that, hey, you need to be responsible as a person. You need to be thoughtful, taking care of your slaves, the maidservants, making sure they're taken care of and they're feeling secure. If your animal has done something and you knew that that animal was going to do something like that, it's your responsibility. You need to pay. And life for life, tooth for tooth. And if you're taking care of or taking away somebody's life, like a child in a womb, and it causes trouble, then you're going to have to pay. I mean, this is a big deal. The husband's going to be involved, and the judges are going to be involved, and you're going to have to be responsible for your choices. So that to me makes a lot of sense. I see wisdom in most of these laws here. Some of them, like I said, I don't get totally, but I thank the Lord for his wisdom and the way that he has led his people. I'm sure that they had to write lots of laws to clarify all of the things that the Lord gave here in these judgments or ordinances. So We could come up with a whole bunch of ideas ourselves. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. If you did think about something and wrote it down after we pray, I'd love to hear what you have to say. So I want to be responsible for my own life, for the life of my family and friends, my animals or my vehicles and my tractor and my truck and all the stuff that we have that we are supposed to be taking care of, like the oxen and the children and the house and whatever. Whatever you have, be responsible and own up if something goes bad. So may the Lord bless us all that we can, be those Christians that he wants us to be in preparation for this coming of his Son. So let's pray and ask God to continue to change our hearts so that we can be representative of what he wanted way back, even during that time in the lives of the children of Israel. Father, we thank you for giving us this time. We pray that you'd help us to know and understand a little bit more of what it is that you're teaching. We pray that you would please teach us, guide us, help us to understand. We thank you for the responsibilities that you've laid upon your people. You've provided things for us to take care of, and we ask that you would lead us to do it wisely. Continue to transform us into those people you want us to be. In even work or home situations, help us to be responsible and taking the onus upon ourselves, realizing that you have a purpose and a plan, and that you will take care of those who are willing to walk in accordance with your will. Bless us, keep us, and thank you for this opportunity to be together. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah, Daniel, on verse 29 and 30, where it says that the ox is basically known for being violent in the past and hath been testified to his owners, and he hath not kept him in, or kept him penned in, or whatever, but that he hath killed. So then the ox kills a man or a woman, the ox shall be stoned, and his owner shall be put to death. And then 30, if there be laid on him a sum of money, then he shall give for the ransom of his life whatever is laid upon him. What I see that as, and maybe I'm misinterpreting it, is that they might give that man an option to pay a high ransom or a fine in exchange for his life.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that's good. Okay, I see it.
Yeah, that's the way I saw it anyways. And now around here, there are, well, even in the States, there are still plenty of farmers that own livestock. And we have a particular, we won't name him, but there's a man we know down the road, and he has had livestock that get loose. He's got bulls that are known for being pretty tough bulls, and they will just get those horns of theirs and they'll jack up the fence with their horns and just trample it under, and they're loose. And he has had a hard time keeping those cows and bulls fenced in. And when they get out on the highway, they have called on several occasions people we know who've gotten in bad accidents, hitting these cows in the wee hours of the morning when it's just the light isn't good and all. And eventually the law of the land still today will say, look, you've got to fence your animals in, or you've got to put down that bull that keeps wrecking the fence, and you've got to pay a high fine. So they're not taking a man's life in today's society either, but they do make him pay for retribution for what has been done.
Well, good for them, yeah. And it makes sense, it does. Our neighbor used to have a dog that would come out and terrorize my sister when she lived with us, and then also he would try to come at me, but I was way too aggressive for him, so he wouldn't do much. But we would threaten him like, hey, man, we're going to call somebody. He's like, this is public property, I can have my dogs out. But he couldn't, I know that. So we had to call several times on him. I remember as a new Christian, I really liked the laws that were in Exodus, Leviticus, and Deuteronomy. They were just neat to look at. Brand new Christian 25 years ago. It's been a long time since I've read Exodus 21. I mean, several times this week, but before that, it's been a while.
When you really think of it, these are just an expansion of the Ten Commandments, just kind of giving real life examples so God dealt with them right where they were. And I think that's why there were rules about servants and slaves, or whatever they were called in that day. God knew that they were not ready to change their lifestyles overnight. All of society was geared with this sort of slavery sort of thing. And I don't think God ever meant for people to own people as slaves or whatever our understanding is of that. And that's why it's so appalling to us. But yet God knew that was their lifestyle then, and they hadn't totally changed yet. And so I think he gave them rules so they would treat each other in a civil, kind, just manner, and hopefully be setting a Christ-like example, treating them like family, like you sort of mentioned, you know.
Yeah, I think so. Now, Judy asked, how would 21 verse 11 fit in today, given 21:10? I'm going to see 21:11. Let's see what she means here. If he take him another wife, her food or raiment and her duty of marriage shall not diminish. And if he do not these three unto them or her, then shall she go out without money. So what do you guys think? How would you answer that? How would this fit in today?
I think I would refer them to Christ when he answered them about the multiple wives and the divorce situation. And he said it was because of the weakness that God gave these rules to them, but that is not how God intended it to be.
Amen.
And God, I don't think, ever intended to people to have multiple wives or multiple husbands.
Amen.